That Davis Show with former member of the show, big time podcast producer down at NBC Sports Chicago. Also, he covers the Chicago Bulls here in Chicago. Follow him at the Tony Gill. Lucky enough to have Tony Gill with us today to talk about the Bulls, his thoughts, what's transpired with the draft, and also with free agency around the league and the trades that have commenced since the NBA has come back into session. All right, T, you were the one in our group that broke the news that from Casey Johnson, because, of course, you record the podcast with him, Jason Goff, Kendall Gill, so on and so forth, Mad Dog. You broke the news to us in our group that they were going to take Patrick Williams. So when you first heard that, what was your initial thought when you heard that the Bulls were going to choose Patrick Williams from Florida State at the fourth pick?
Who?
You put some respect on Supreme Dream's name.
But yeah, no, that for all the research that was, done, and then different mocks that was out there, he was certainly not in the realm of possibility, leading up to, this week. It was only, the last maybe Friday or like this week or so.
Yeah, I seen him in Athletic.
Yeah, Patrick's name started to being floated around in connection with the Bulls. So that was like, an emergency. I remember our organization, NBC, when KC told us before he went to print with it, we had no video, no artwork or anything that led up to Patrick Williams. I mean, there was literally pieces and breakdowns done on so many different players, and he was not one of them. So it was certainly surprising when we first heard the news about Patrick.
Hey, real quick, who does that? Because because you know me, like I talked to you, I think Tuesday night. Mm-hmm. And when I do my deep dives, I start, and it's funny because I realize how much I love sports. I start trying to consume everything. And I was sitting there, and you kind of get tired of seeing the same highlights. But the package that ran on NBC Chicago last night during the draft recap, I love whoever edited showing the different angles of the same play because there's so few plays out there. I was like, that's the same play again right there, right? And I know that it's been done before, but who can you tell us who does that? Because I want to give them their props because they did a real good job of stretching that material that they had on Patrick Williams and FSU.
Yeah, that's our video crew, Brad Fossler, and everybody back at the studio, the ranch. I haven't been back, so I don't know. What goes on at the studio anymore. I've been since, March. But we got a real solid team, and they got, prepared as soon as, we got the hint that Patrick could be it. So, we have to scroll through, YouTube and television to see where those highlights were.
I was looking, I think you hit it. I was pretty sure I was reading Athletic, and friend of the show, definitely him, you booked him for us back in the days. Darnell Mayberry was sitting there, and they did their mocks for the draft, or they may have just been doing the Bulls pick. I can't remember. But I remember someone mentioned Patrick Williams, and I was like, wait, they're talking about in the second round, right? Because I'm like, I ain't heard of this name right here, right? And that was the first time I remember seeing it until you told us that KC, and basically if it's from KC, it's from the word of mouth, that's what's going to be the pick. Like, it was no reason to think after you said the night before that if that was going to be the pick, that someone else was going to be the pick. So after you did a little scouting, Tony, what was your thoughts on Patrick Williams?
A very mature player. And when I thought about it too much, I'm like, man, this is a kind of you can picture John and Gar picking this dude in terms of high floor type guys and not really high ceiling. But after hearing what, Artur said about him, he certainly believes that Patrick has a high ceiling.
Yeah,
as a player, a real high ceiling. But if you look at him for face value, you may think of him as a high floor guy. So it depends on where you're starting to look from, because there are pieces for both arguments where there's certainly arguments on both sides of, high floor, low ceiling guy, and the other way around. It depends on how you look at it. And certainly Artur is looking at it from, he can be a profound player at this level with his skill set. He already has, elite athletic ability, run, jump, all those things that you typically want from a top 5 guy to compete physically at the next level. But the next is, where's his room for improved skill level? He won an award, ACC sixth man, of the year, but you take a guy number 4 overall, you don't plan for him to,
be sixth man for you.
Right, to be the sixth man for you. You expect him to be a contributor, a starter, and this is even more than Kobe White. Like, I know it's only 3 slots, above, but being a top 5 pick means something, in the NBA, and that comes with a lot of expectations. So if AK decides to go with, Patrick Williams, he's obviously seeing a bright future for him.
Now, being a top 5 pick in the NBA in a draft that doesn't have, that's not heavy on the top, does that really mean the same compared to, if I don't even want to include last year's draft because it was really a 2-person draft in Zion and Ja. But let's just say like a draft where it's one of those drafts where the draft the year before where you had DeAndre Ayton, you had Luka Doncic, you had Bagley, even though he hasn't really hit the way that you hit, then you would think he hit, and you had Trae Young. Like, see, now if we're talking about that draft, I agree with you. The 5th pick in that draft, you better be something. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know if I can say that the same as this draft, because this draft wasn't even last year's draft when it was only 2 players. Me, and I told you this Tuesday night, I think, listen, I didn't read what Arturas Karnisovas said, and I read it in the Tribune from Collier had printed it, and he's talking about his perception of him and that people thought he was a raw athlete and that he wasn't skilled. And he said that he thought his skill level was high. This is before, I didn't see this before I started watching the video. Me watching the video, my first thoughts were, damn, this kid's thighs are thick. How quick and quick twitchy can he be with those thighs, those Bryant Russell thighs? And I may be a little bit before your time, all right, but just see Mike moving him to the side with his left hand. Look at the thighs the next time you see that. All right, they're very thick. Took us. So, and then sitting there still watching the highlights. First thing I was like, oh, okay, Shorty can handle the ball. Now, it wasn't like he was out there with like the ball on the string, but it was more for that big, like, for instance, and I'm not comparing him. I'm not comparing him to someone like a Scottie Pippen. All right. But Scottie Pippen wasn't someone that you saw throwing the ball behind his back crazy all the time, but you never saw Scottie get ripped. I'm not comparing to him. I'm really using an example of a larger forward that has skills where he can actually handle the ball. At this point, I didn't know. I knew he played some point guard. I didn't know he played as many years at point guard growing up in North Carolina in high school, or 3 years, I believe Arturas had mentioned. The shot, the mechanics were right. There wasn't a fear in the shot. Watching him get off the ground, I was like, oh, okay, I see it. Sitting there looking at the little stutter step in between. Now, again, there's a biasness because I want there to be some success. So I'd be lying to say that. But initially, I wasn't with it. But when I watched a lot of video, I was like, okay, I compared him because to me, it was him. And correct me when I get this name wrong. Dene Adja. Did I say that right? Diddy Adja. Okay, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm about to talking about, yeah.
But to me, I viewed it as really a race between the two of them. And I started to come around more on the Denny side when I watched more tape on him, because you can see he has a natural feel for the game. And I guess I really want to know what you think about him, since you were someone that wanted Luka when he was coming out. I remember you like get Luka, and I was like, I don't know about young wannabe Mano. All right, but you were definitely right. You're definitely right. But watching it made me feel better comparing those two players, because the ceiling is higher on Patrick Williams because of his athleticism. You know what I'm saying? Where you pretty much know what you're going to get from Denny. And like I said with the guys last night, I do think for a season or two, Denny's probably going to look better than Patrick Williams. But I think in the long run, and if they develop how we felt like, because that was the reason why we wanted this team to come here and do the Denver thing over here, if they develop him, he should necessarily be fine. So let me ask you about the Denny part. How did you feel when Denny was the pick, and after they picked Patrick Williams, would you have still preferred for them to have picked Denny Adjo from Israel?
That is a tough question, and to put context on the Luka versus Denny thing, like I just did kind of like the math with Luka. and in terms of how old he was, and he was dominating the second best league in the world after the NBA, at 17 and 18, and it wasn't even close. And in a league where I wasn't all in on Ayton, and I was definitely out on Bagley. I was like, there shouldn't be, another reason why you should want to take another player outside of Luka, number one overall, just because he's dominating the second best league. It's a better league than college basketball. So when I looked at Denny and people were throwing those comparisons out there, in terms of with Luka, obviously Denny is a little bit bigger, more forward than point guard type. I just didn't see that part, like that dominating, overwhelming force in the league that he was playing in. And it certainly wasn't, the best league or the second best league in the world like Luka was playing. So I didn't want to put that on him. The skill level is definitely a lot better than Patrick at this point in time. But the way that we hope that AK can do in terms of the type of development that we saw, in Denver, he's probably thinking, you just give me an athletic piece, I can teach, or we can teach him in this environment how to become a skilled player. So in terms of maximizing that athleticism, that already elite athleticism that Patrick Williams has, AK is basically saying with this pick, we're going to have an elite breeding ground here where we're going to, develop at a clip where the athleticism that he already has is going to be the secondary part. We're going to teach him how to play basketball here, and he's going to grow. And that room, that athletic space that you get, that growth, that instant amount of growth of space that you do get by being an athlete and then learning how to play basketball, that's what he's banking on. So when you look at the film between Denny and Patrick, like I said before, Denny's you're right, Ken, like I 100% agree with you. Fans don't get worried in the first 2 years because Denny has played professional basketball, for longer than Patrick Williams. Like that's what it is. They come in, those guys, the foreign guys always now typically come in more mature and more ready to play professional basketball if their bodies are ready for it. So he certainly has the body ready to come in and play and contribute to a team. But you got to look at, once you start seeing the positions that the Bulls are going to have Patrick in, he's going to get some playing time. He's going to get a lot of playing time. So don't bet on, a lot of Otto Porter, a lot of Chandler Hutchison like we've had in the past. Patrick's going to get his opportunities, and they're going to try and do some things with him. I'm very interested to see what Billy Donovan has, in store for him. I mean, we saw the growth. Obviously, having Chris Paul in OKC helped with the growth of the young players there. But we saw young players grow mature under Billy Donovan. So I'm very interested to see what they can breed here with Patrick.
That David show right here, we have Tony Gill with us. Follow him at the Tony Gill, podcast producer for NBC Sports Chicago, and he also covers the Bulls. He made sure they put that in the contract. But listen. One comp for anybody that is old enough that can remember, and it's not a apples to apples because these two players were coming from overseas. But kind of what we're trying to say about don't be surprised when Denny takes off, especially where there's not as much talent in Washington as there is here in Chicago, where they're still trying to figure out what all the pieces are doing. Basically, it's going to be Bradley Beal, Denny, and maybe a healthy John Wall. If John Wall is still with the teams, we heard the rumors of perhaps a trade with Houston, even though they're not offering necessarily what Houston wants. But the comparison I was going to make, because of the situation they're in, is Dino Raja and Tony Kukoc when they came from overseas. Probably in the 93-94 seasons, the year after the Bulls won a championship. Now, Dino Raja went to the Boston Celtics, who at this point, they were bereft of talent. And then you had Tony Kukoc come here, where it was becoming Scotty's show, and you still had Horace and BJ, because they both made the All-Star team the year after Jordan had first retired. And Tony, it took a minute, plus they wanted Scotty to move to shooting guard and let Tony play at 3, but Scotty was like, no, he's going to have to be a 4. And initially, they put a little bit of weight on Tony, but then they ended up taking it off. Dino Raja was getting off with the Celtics, but it was short-lived. You know what I'm saying? And Tony Kukoc, you still historically hear people talk about Tony Kukoc and what he meant from European players coming over here. You know what I'm saying? But you never hear anybody mention, unless you're in Boston, Dino Rogers. So I just want to point out that's kind of what we're saying, that initially, one, he's a young player. He has to find his way, but also he's not going to be given the shots that Denny's going to be given playing out there in Washington. As Tony alluded to, he is coming from being a professional, where this kid is being a sixth man and only playing 22 minutes on an ACC team. Real quick, this is my last thing as far as Patrick Williams before we jump into the draft. Nobody is going along with me on this. Does Patrick Williams look like Mark Phillips' Supreme Dream from was it RDC World? Does he not? Listen, the clips where they play basketball, he looks like him. Not just does he look like him. When they play basketball, like the clips was like that, it's like LeBron. He looks like him. I'm putting out there. I gave you red for Gafford. I gave you red. My office hours are. I gave you red for Gafford. Tony, I'm giving you this too. All right? Now run with it. Gave you the finish, Lord. Now run with it. Because I'm telling you, this can blow up right here. All right? Just make sure you give me my props down the line. All right. That David Show, my man Tony Gill. Tony, listen, out of the top three, if the Bulls had a chance, which one of those players would you have preferred and why?
LaMelo. I thought that Anthony Edwards was the most physically gifted player out of the three, in terms of leaping ability and athleticism, but the most skilled player, and in terms of who can have the most impact on the Bulls as soon as possible, I think was LaMelo. Kobe, I don't think is the playmaker at all. I think his skill best serves as a shooting guard, and I think ultimately he may be a Lou Williams type ultimately, but you got to see, what it looks like with him starting for a long period of time. You got to see what that looks like.
Yeah,
I expect Kobe to get a lot of starting. I expect him to start from the jump. Yeah. But LaMelo would allow guys to be the best that they can be in terms of scoring output. Zach LaVine, he's a scorer. I think having LaMelo would have given him the opportunities to be that. The person that really would have benefited would have been Lauri Markkanen, because he, as we've seen, in the last, year, and I get it, it's under Jim Boylan, so take that, as you will. But to a certain degree, you got to, go out there and create something, and he couldn't do that, on his own. So I think having LaMelo to be able to set the table for them, who's coming into the league, will be an elite passer. Mm-hmm. Just flat out, like
tricky.
At worst, he will be a top 5 or 6 passer in the NBA at his absolute worst.
Right.
And I think that is a huge value now at the NBA level. So Laurie would have seen a boost. Wendell Carter would have seen a boost in his offensive output. So I think that LaMelo would have been the guy for the Bulls to take if the Bulls were allowed to get him.
Let's on a side note. I got to go to a side note. So how frightful of you that your baby was going to get traded away?
Oh, I was scared. I had big plans for Wendell. I was reaching out to the Bulls for some Black History stuff that I wanted to do for Wendell. So I was sitting there nervous, like, man, if they trade him, we got to change some stuff.
Was this Black History stuff all based off of the Asian tiger dragon that was supposed to be Black Panther coming to America that was on the Gucci print from draft night? Is this what the Black History stuff was based off of? Okay. The Wendell love. I mean, I just need him. Listen, it'd be different if he'd been healthy for these 2 years. I'm with y'all on the Wendell love. All right? I'm with you. But it's just like people were in the streets with pitchforks when they heard that the Bulls may move him out for a better player. I'm just going to put that out there. All right. Getting back to it. That David Show, Tony Gill. Follow him at the Tony Gill. Tony, the players that were picked after the 4th pick, all right? So the players, and some of those players were people that were players that people had in the mock draft going to the Bulls. Now, it doesn't have to specifically be those players, but what players after the 4th pick would you have probably preferred the Bulls to pick instead of Williams?
Killian Hayes.
I was a Killian guy.
Yeah, that was my guy really from the jump. In terms of, because I'm looking at the Bulls. I mean, they could have went with another wing player since the rest of their wings aren't healthy ever. So I could have saw that, but I thought if they were going to ride this roster out to see what it looks like, to see what it could be at most, they needed a guy that could set the table. And I thought if you couldn't get LaMelo, who is the best out of this draft in terms of doing that, Killian Hayes was the next best thing. Again, he went overseas, played very well overseas. He wanted to go play basketball.
Yeah.
And his father was like, nah, you're going to go over here and play with professionals if you want this to be your dream. So, and he was proven right. He was a top 10 pick in the NBA draft. So, I like Killian Hayes. I like the way he plays. I like the maturity in his game. It's only second best to LaMelo, who just happened to be the best passer in this draft. And I thought that if they wanted to see what this roster could be like at full max potential next year, I thought Killian Hayes would have been the pick.
So my Killian Hayes, I was like Killian Hayes over Tyrese Halliburton, right? Mm-hmm. But to be honest with you, after reviewing more tape, I felt like because his name was Killian and my name starts with the K. Mm-hmm. But and he was coming from France. But after reviewing more tape, I really start to be down on his athleticism. Like for him to be 6'5", him to be 6'5", I was like, Shorty can't jump for nothing. He's tall. I was like, I don't know about this. I was like, let me see more of that Halliburton tape over here real quick. Right? I was like, I think I'm wrong with the Killian thing. Like talking to Matt Peck, and he's a Killian Hayes guy too. Mm-hmm. And I was the interview from this week, and I went and I watched more Killian Hayes, and I was like, I don't know if you're right about this kid right here. Now, again, at point guard, you don't have to be yoking on people at point guard. You know what I'm saying? But it's still it's beneficial. And I'm not even just saying as far as getting up to be able to yoke on somebody, but it's beneficial to be able to get some lift on your lobs when you're getting into the paint. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing where I start to be like, okay, maybe on my Killian point, maybe outside of Killian, who else would you prefer perhaps the Bulls to take?
I guess the next player would be Halliburton. Mm-hmm. Again, another guy, Iowa State, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a bigger, guy, but again, point guard, a guy that can, set the table for the rest of his teammates. Definitely more athletic than Killian. Yes. I was giving Killian the slight edge just because he was going to make the most impact right away because of his experience overseas. Mm-hmm. But Halliburton's I think he's going to be a solid player. Maybe at his low point, maybe Evan Turner-esque at the low.
Ooh, you giving him something if you – wait, what Evan Turner are we talking about? Like Evan Turner when he was getting buckets or like when it was like, what was going on with Evan Turner?
Like Portland Evan Turner.
Okay.
Guy at his low point, guy come off the bench, be able to, facilitate and do a little bit of everything. Pretty solid, defensively because of his size and length. So that's kind of where if you're going to think that way, if you're in management, like, all right, what's the low point on this guy?
Right.
The low point if he turns out, and I don't think having Evan Turner in your team is a bad.
That big of a deal. I mean, again, I'm happier that they didn't go because I think. I'm happy they didn't go with the ceiling because I'll say this, and you alluded to it earlier. I don't think Garpax would have chosen Patrick Williams, right? I think they would have went with one of the surer bets. Listen, they would have even went sure. They would have went with the sure bet, or they would have taken Killian Hayes. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like if they were going to vacillate crazy. It was going to be foundational college guy like Obi Toppin, right? Mm-hmm. Or European guy that's like, I don't even know what's going on right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, look, for instance, like Dene Aja, like that, it would have been something like that. But I don't think they would have went Patrick Williams because of the fact that, one, he was a bench player. I think that would have scared them off. You know what I'm saying? Like, and the years that we've seen them, they've never necessarily done that. So I don't think they would have done that. But listen, that Davis show, Tony Gill looking up to be on with us. Tony, for you, what was the worst pick and who had made the worst pick and who made the best picks from last night?
Man, see, with this draft, like after 3,
it's crapshoot,
right? And like, I don't know if there was, a reach to be had. Like you can make the argument the Bulls reached.
The Bulls seem to be the biggest reach. That's
right. In terms of everybody that made selections last night. But yeah, I couldn't tell you just because like now obviously every draft there are going to be players, back ends and second round where you'd be like, oh, how come we didn't see that? But like without the revisionist history, we're going to be like, yeah, everybody was a crapshoot at this point, and everybody I think was just looking for a solid contributor, especially in where they're not going to get a lot of camp. It's going to be a weird season, next year. So we probably won't see unless somebody just comes in spectacular. Like they got to get ready to play a man's game, really quickly. So it's going to be a weird season. I don't know if there was somebody that, just objectively failed. I didn't see anybody just super, angry about the pick. There were a lot of confused Bulls fans. I will say that last night, like not really knowing who Patrick Williams was, which, I get.
It's understandable.
But yeah, it's understandable. But I've been saying this to, a lot of people that this is just a wait and see. You put a pin in this. You put a pin in this draft as, all right, this is the first skeptical kind of move that we're
it's somewhat sus.
Right. You don't mention it just now. You don't kill him for it now because, again, we don't know what he can turn into. Mm-hmm. But this is going to be the first time because the rest of the moves were easy. Right, you fired Gar Forman, you moved John Paxson kind of out of the way, you fired Jim Boylan. All those were givens. This was the first move where we get to see, okay, all right, we're gonna let you rock, but if this doesn't turn out, if he's Chandler Hutchison Part 2, that's on you.
Don't you put that on him, Ricky Bobby. My Patrick Williams will not be Chandler. Chandler Hutchison not have been drafted and promised that he was gonna be picked up. All right, don't you put that on Patrick Williams.
I'm just saying, I'm giving it room to go either way. I'm giving him the room to be, if he can be, Scottie Pippen in your comparison.
I'm not saying it's going to be
Taylor Hutchison. That's a wide berth. I'm allowing it to go either way.
I don't understand Scott, because I will say this as a knock on him. I don't know if he'll ever have that pure dog in him where it's like, I'm going to get my point. I think best case scenario for Patrick Williams is probably 17 points, 7 rebounds, maybe a few assists. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's where he'll be. To me, his ceiling will be when the moment's there is when he pops to 20-something odd points. You know what I'm saying? Like, or he's the guy that's running down the dude and blocking the shot. You know what I'm saying? With the fact that he's a rim protector, the way that he's a rim protector. There's times his jump very well when it comes to rim protection when he's off the ball. All right. So I don't want to ask you who won the draft because basically you just told me we don't know. We all know. We're probably not.
I do have one that I do like though.
Oh, okay, give it to me.
I remember when it happened. RJ Hampton to the Denver Nuggets.
I know you love that. When I saw that, I was like, listen, I'm not gonna lie. When I saw that, I was like, motherfuckers. You keep doing it, don't you? You got Michael Porter Jr., right? And then you go sneak it. I was like, I thought like the tandem of them running together. I said, this ain't even right, man. I was like, yeah, that one kind of got to me a little bit, to be honest with you.
Because, I mean, again, RJ Hampton, I mean, he's not, the best passer of the draft, but he is a willing, facilitator. He's more of a scorer. And if the Gary Harris thing doesn't work out from a health, standpoint, Jamal Murray having a running mate in the backcourt, like RJ Hampton, if he turns out to be, the player that people think that he can be, Denver might get a whip.
Dude, the thing is this: I'm gonna tell you how they damn near insulate themselves from him not being the player. The knock that's been on RJ Hampton for the last year basically is his feel of the game. It's kind of like, yeah, Shorty has the tools, but he kind of doesn't know how to put that ish together. You know what I'm saying? Like when you read between the lines, like it's like he doesn't know really how to accentuate himself in the game. And yeah, he can pass, but he's not like, no, he doesn't have to be a playmaker. But as you just said, dog, when you got who they got, first of all, their center's the point guard, right? Then you got a dominant player in Murray. You got Michael Porter Jr. coming on. All Shorty got to do is run. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's all like, go. All right, doom, 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 doom. Like, that's all he basically has to, like, I'm happy you said that because I forgot after last night because I got up in the middle of the morning. I was up for like 3 to 4 hours in the middle of this morning consuming draft fish. And when that happened in the draft, I said, damn, Denver's going to keep Denver, right? Like, you're going to keep, and I hate it because it has nothing to do with us, but you know how we wanted Michael Porter Jr., right? And it feels like they stole RJ from me too. Because it's like it just feels like it's like you got me. You sneaking SOBs, you got me. All right, Tony. A little bit. Let's get out of the draft and talk more about the trades that took place. You had the failure, and we don't know what's going to happen with Bogdanovich. Just all the moves. Chris Paul. All these moves that take place. Which ones have you liked? Which ones haven't you liked? And have there been any that are coming down the line? And then we don't have to do the Houston one, but any that are coming down the line because you're privy to more information than us who sit on the outside that you've heard about.
I like the Chris Paul move to Phoenix. I think because of the weight of Chris Paul's contract, he's been turned into, look, we're paying you too much money for us to win a championship. So could you just guide our young players while you're here and let's do a little bit of winning so they know what it feels like and what it's supposed to be. And I like that trade to Phoenix because, one, Devin Booker is about to lead the league in scoring. And it's going to be fun watching him do it efficiently. And they got a professional in there. And we know what the rumors were, the confirmed rumors about how Phoenix players like to get down.
Oh, don't do the no jumper stuff on my show. You low down dirty dog. You low down. We're more professional than that. Don't you bring that over here. You wouldn't do that over at NBC. Listen, first thing I thought is Chris Paul be like, all right, now we all done did it. You need to stop. You need to stop. And also, I'm going to go first moving forward. No, jokes.
Yeah, jokes. But I mean, they needed a professional basketball player in that room so they know how to win. And they needed that. DeAndre Ayton needs that. So again, this could go really extremely well because they're obviously more talented.
That's what I was gonna say. I like it a lot, but Tony.
This also can go like really poorly.
It's hurt
because one, if Chris Paul gets hurt. But they also could hate Chris Paul.
They could hate Chris Paul.
That's also an option. And then now what? You're stuck with this big contract. You can try and move him mid-season, but that's also an option that they can end up like, hey, we don't like what Chris is trying to do here. We're going to do our own thing. And they just kind of fight against each other.
It's only one person there that hating Chris Paul matters. And I don't think that Booker is going to end up hating. I think there's going to be some time he doesn't like him. But I think he's going to respect him enough not to hate him. Because
when the first time Chris says you're not going over the Kardashians' house, you're going to I don't know how that's going to go.
Listen, he's going to let him go. It's the Bahamian's not going to get an option in this. All right, Chris Paul will be like, you sit your tall ass down. But the thing that another reason why I like it, Tony, is they have premium talent. Like DeAndre Ayton hasn't even cracked it yet, and he's 18 and 12 basically. And now you look at DeAndre Jordan, you look at Tyson Chandler, these players that Chris Paul got checks for.
David West.
And you say what?
David West.
Yeah, thank you, David West. And they got checks for, even though David West made some money in Indiana before he ended up getting there. But he was a little bit known. But no, still to your point. To my point. The fact that you have these supreme talents, you have one of the best scorers in Devin Booker, and now as Chris Paul ages back, I think is what's going to help them because basically I would think the ball is going to transition back into being, I'm talking about year 2, to being more in Devin Booker's hands and Chris Paul setting them up and Chris Paul basically being kind of what people kind of say about Halliburton as far as, he can be the point guard, but he can also play off the ball. And now at his older age, like for the last 6 years, Chris Paul has been a much better three-point shooter than he was earlier on in his career. So I like it because, like I think you're trying to say, with OKC, you knew they didn't have uber talent. It was basically Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, right, as far as like the talent that you were trying to shape, where they have even better talent, and now you're putting still a generational point guard who's proven that he can still get it done with that team. And even with how he played in OKC, you don't have to use him and give him the amount of minutes that he had to play when he was playing in Houston with James Harden. So that one I really like. What other trades stood out to you? Or what other trades stood out to you? What trades perhaps didn't you like?
The Milwaukee trade and the Pelicans for Giroux, without the details, I was like, wow. Like I thought Milwaukee really, really improved because you obviously saw that the loss of Malcolm Brogdon affected them greatly. They had to depend on Eric Bledsoe for point guard duties. I mean, he was a great defender. I mean, he made all defensive not first team, but he made all defensive teams. But you couldn't play him down the stretch because he couldn't shoot. And you need players that can contribute on both ends of the court in the most critical moments when you need them. Because, we saw what happened down the stretch of games where Giannis can't shoot. He can't make free throws. So you need players that can supplement that effort because I think he's a made player now. I don't know how much better Giannis is going to, get, and he's already elite, obviously. But I don't know if there's any more room for him to grow. This is what it is. So you need to start supplementing players around him that makes up for his deficiencies. And I think Giroux is a perfect fit for that. He's a good scorer. He's a good playmaker. He's a great defender. All those things that you needed from Eric Bledsoe, you're going to get.
Closer.
Right, a closer. You're going to get that with Jrue Holiday. Would I have given up 3 first-round picks for him, along with George Hill and Eric Bledsoe?
You can have George Hill and Eric Bledsoe.
Yeah, but the picks, I was like, ooh. Once those details of the picks came out, I was like, I don't know.
Hey, Giannis gonna leave, or you gonna surround him with talent, or is Giannis gonna leave?
Yeah, man, 3 is a lot. 3 first-rounders was a lot. But especially for a Pelicans team that was trying to get rid of him. Mm-hmm. So I get the Bledsoe and the Hill giving those 2 away just to make the money work.
Right.
I would even felt better if you just gave 2 first-round picks, but that third one really kind of had.
It was a lot of teams. How many teams were connected to Jrue Holiday this offseason? Everybody almost. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. The Nets. I believe probably the Philadelphia. Out west, there was several teams. It was a lot of teams. Definitely the Milwaukee Bucks. There were a lot of teams, and again, I'm not discounting what you're saying, but when you're just giving up, nobody wants Eric Bledsoe. All right,
no, in that contract,
and
it's gonna be weird having him in. And you see what they thought about Eric Bledsoe because New Orleans picked 2 point guards. They picked 2 point guards in the draft yesterday.
And then Mr. Ooey Pooey George Hill. I had some thoughts on it. I'm a George Hill fan as far as he a stand-up brother. But part of the reason that brother may have been shipped was it's like, you know what? We don't want that around here no more. There's a lot going on in Milwaukee. And listen, you had to send him. It's like you sending him down here to New Orleans. You're gonna have to put some extra on it. You're gonna have to put some extra on that, right? We don't need all of that black and black. But again, now we love it. But these are busy. That's what they crossed my mind because I was like, George Hill. And I was like, oh, George Hill, right? Talking about perhaps that they shouldn't be playing at that time. And again, I'm with George Hill. I'm just talking about, I wonder, what I'm saying, when you're taking these players, these aren't necessarily quote unquote uber desired players, particularly at this stage of their career. It's funny with Eric Bledsoe. I remember 5 or 6 years when people was comparing him saying, man, that's a beggar LeBron James. It was like, yeah, all right. You don't remember hearing those? Because at one point he was supposed to end up in Cleveland when he was sitting there with the Phoenix Suns and everything that was happening when they had 18 point guards back then or whatever. And it was like, I don't know if he was clutch.
He's a clutch client now.
Yeah, he suspect that. They like, man, I was like, get your asses out of here. All right. So I got to get closer and near to your heart. All right. There was a tragedy that took place yesterday. And I'm not even joking. There's a young man who may never be the same. And it's funny. I kept thinking, I wonder, will he get back? But I didn't think he was going to blow out his Achilles. And that's Klay Thompson. Unfortunately, Klay Thompson, Splash Brother, hurt himself yesterday prior to the draft. What are your thoughts on that? And how do you feel now about the window for the Warriors basically closing?
If they don't get a Herculean unanimous MVP, Steph Curry, they're going to be really competitive, but I don't think they have a real shot at a championship. And they thought they went about this draft looking for another piece that they can add that can help with winning. They weren't trying to, take Wiseman as their first choice going into this draft. They were trying to give that pick away so they can make another run, at it for the next year, 2 years or so of legitimate, winning. And now with another, Achilles tear for Klay Thompson, that's essentially closed if Steph can't dominate the NBA, which is a tough ask at his age and his injury history at this point.
Even if he could, Tony, they don't have enough. If Steph was super Steph to get to the finals in the West, out of the West, you still saying Steph is the greatest basketball player of all time since you saying that?
He's on Mount Rushmore.
Oh, my goodness.
Change the game, baby. Let's go.
Tony, anything in free agency, anything in free agency, first with the Bulls, even though we know that they're basically capped out, that you expect to see real quick?
Little moves here and there.
Yeah,
some veterans to supplement. Laurie, since they didn't make any trades of the young core guys, I got to assume they're going into. I mean, obviously they can trade anybody at any point. Talks don't stop just because the draft happened. So anybody, they're not married to anybody on this roster outside of the 2 players they selected in the draft. So anybody can be moved, but I think maybe they get some more veteran players. And again, like Otto Porter is a quote unquote veteran because of his longevity, but I don't know if he's a veteran in terms of leadership on this team. They still got that young. People still, he's still around. So he's one of their leaders of this team. But I think getting more guys that can supplement and so they can really see with a good coaching staff, with a good development team, with a good health and training staff, I think we're actually going to get a good picture about what this roster was supposed to look like. And then we can figure out, all right, who needs to be moved so we can actually get to the real destination. So they got a year. They got a year of experimenting with this roster to see what it looks like in their perfect situation. But I can't really think of like any specific. Maybe they go after point guard, in the veteran group and free agency. Maybe they'll address that from there.
You just said except they're 2 players, so you think they're really big on the kid that they're stashing overseas. I know his jumper, the center's jumper is wet, but his up body is soft. Chuck was getting muscled all over the place. It was like, well, damn, but his jumper was extremely wet.
He saw Jokic.
I know, right? But not the passing. But that boy, listen, that 7-footer's jumper was wet. Well, I said, goodness gracious. All right, Tony, last one, and I'm going to let you get out of here. Tony Gill, follow him at @TonyGill from NBC Sports Chicago, podcast producer, also covers the Bulls, and also a close friend of all of us. You put out your birthday reflection because your birthday just passed in the last couple of weeks. How did that go, and how was it received?
I thought it went really well, and I didn't really, promote it really. I just kind of put it out there. People wanted to check it out or not. I mainly did the project for me. And this was like, how every artist, they got like, no, I got to do this album.
My album? This is me.
This
was like, what is this trash?
So this was that in podcast form. Thanks a lot again. Kenneth Davis is a part of that project. He's on side B of the project, and I thought it went well. Like I really enjoyed how open people were with their stories, with their connection with myself and how I've gotten to this point in my life of being 28 years old. I said in the beginning of the podcast, like I know it's weird to do a reflection over your life at 28.
Biography, right. In my bio.
At 28, but
memoirs at 28.
Yeah, but 2020 was a long year and a very interesting year for everybody, and I'm sure everybody had to sit at home and think about their lives and their place in the world at this point. And I just kind of did it via my medium at this point, which is podcasting. So thanks again for being with that. Appreciate it.
I know it was an honor. How's the girlfriend's part? It wasn't when you did her part. You get down, since D said I ain't say anything because I was being classy. Just get down to the freaky Nickies. Now I'm only saying this for D. This isn't Ken. Old Ken, yes. Old Ken, old Ken, new old Ken. All right. My maturity rate is like it's no one's business. But I don't even want you to say that. I'm just busting your balls. I always love you, bro. Everybody, to follow the Tony Gill when he gets his Twitter back. So when it's stolen it, when we find you, we will bust your ass.
Yeah, I can't wait to see my mentions. When I get my Twitter back. It's going to go right now, but I'm getting it back soon. So
the DMs that you've been in, Tony, that you don't know about. Just think about that. You've been blue checking in ways you ain't never blue checked in your life. But Tony, definitely have a good one. Keep up always the good work, man. And we love you on this side.
Hey, I love you guys too. Appreciate you.
No doubt.